Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be going through the best books that I read in 2021. You will have to bear with me because it is raining here and it just won't stop, so maybe it'll just add a little bit to the ambience, who knows. But anyway, without further ado, I think I've got around about 8 books to get through. I didn't really read as much as I would have liked to in 2021, but I did still read some really great books, so let's have a look. First up, this book / 3 books in one doesn't really need an introduction at all. It is none other than Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien, and in 2021 I read it for the first time, even though I have been an ardent fan of the films ever since they came out. They really, I don't know, just spoke to me as a kid. And I did try and read Fellowship several times, but at that point, I don't know why I didn't know this, but I needed glasses. And I would try and read it and the print is just so small and it would just give me eye ache. And I'd just be like, oh, maybe I just can't get into this. But it was just a fact of girl needed glasses, didn't get them for years and years. And yeah. And then after I got glasses, I was like, I probably should try and read Lord of the Rings now, but it's the case of sometimes you get intimidated by something, and quite often I find that I don't like the things that I'm told I should like. For example, there's loads of classics that I just think are dull and boring, but you're told, oh, this is fantastic literature, but half the time it's just really boring. Like, for example, Sherlock Holmes, absolutely shit in my opinion. I hate them. I read, it's actually this year or last year, 2021, that I read The Hound of Baskervilles, supposedly the greatest Sherlock Holmes mystery. It was boring. I struggled to get through it. And yeah, I don't think it should be a classic. Yes, maybe it's because of inventing a whole genre of detective fiction, but nah, not my thing. But thankfully I absolutely adored reading Lord of the Rings, and the only thing I'm annoyed at is the fact that I didn't read it sooner, but I'm gonna be rereading this for the rest of my life, so that's great. What did I like the most? Tolkien had beautiful prose, and just the way he describes natural landscapes, his fondness for trees is something I can wholeheartedly agree with, sympathise with. There's a line that Legolas says, he's like, I am at home among trees or something. I was like, yes, I get that. So yeah, that really spoke to me. I mean, obviously there are several ways that you can read this trilogy. I read it in the fact that it's almost, I mean, is it in the modern day to be sort of looked at as climate change fiction? You could see the orcs and the sort of dark lord Sauron as industrialisation, and that the elves, the hobbits, who all live in harmony with nature, are on a mission to defeat climate change. I mean, I don't know whether that's just me being a bit pretentious, but I feel like I read somewhere that might have been some of Tolkien's inspiration by certain things. He was disheartened about, I think it was the area that he grew up in becoming more industrialised, so I don't know whether I'm just putting words in his mouth, but I can quite easily see it in that way, and I think that added to my love of it because there's a deeper meaning to it. For me anyway, everyone reads a book and they'll read it differently. Some people look at it to do with world wars or something like that. And just war in general, you could read it like that, but for me it was a race to defeat an evil overlord that is destroying the world and its natural beauty. And I love the Ents. Don't be hasty, man. Love it. Love the hobbits. Oh, just everything about it. Aragorn was noble. I mean, the only downside, but obviously it was fiction of its time, was perhaps lack of named female characters. Like, I think it's pretty much Erwin, Arwen, and Galadriel. And then obviously you've got Rosie, but she doesn't really do anything other than be Samwise's love interest. Oh, and can we just talk about Samwise? Literally the most precious character ever. Like, I cried at, you know the scene, like, where he's like fighting off Shelob and like he thinks Frodo's dead. I literally wept and tears fell on the page. And yeah, like, that moment in the movies always chokes me up, and it did again in the books. Love it. Absolutely beautiful. Can't wait to read it again. And in 2022, I'm going to tackle the mammoth. I was going to say the Prose Edda. No, I've already read that. That's one of the books that I'm going to talk about in a minute. The Silmarillion. 2022 is the year I get to it. Like, it's been on my reading list for pretty much probably the same amount of time that Lord of the Rings has. So now it's time. Next up, we're just not really going in order here. I don't have it with me, but I'm going to talk about Dr. Glass by Hjalmar Soderberg. I did a review on this book on my channel. I will link it in the little thingy up there. Loved it. Really great. A classic of Swedish literature. Yeah, it's a really interesting character study. The character goes through some stuff and kind of almost goes insane. It's all told in diary entries, and as you go through the book, he just gets more unhinged as it goes, and it's just a really interesting read. Anyway, I'm not going to talk any more on it. Go watch the review if you want in-depth thoughts on that book. Next we have, we'll talk about the Prose Edda now that I accidentally got it mixed up with the Silmarillion. This is a collection of Norse myths and stories by Story. No, why am I getting confused with the last name and the first name? I always do that. Sometimes I begin, like, when I say people's names, I say the first couple of letters of their surname as their forename. What's that all about? Snorri Sturluson, who was a Icelandic writer chronicling Norse mythology, I think in like the 12th century. So that in itself is quite fascinating, because he was a Christian, and like the country had undergone Christianization and was becoming more distant from Norse mythology. So the fact that he's collecting these stories is a bit like, what does this tell us about that? That's like my inner history nerd kind of like going into full analysis of the validity of sources. But anyway, yeah, I enjoyed this. Like, it's a bit dense because it is an old text, but it's interesting and it's kind of cool if you love mythology, which I do. Like, Norse mythology is one of my favourite sort of things to delve into. Rather do like Greek mythology as well. I am trying to look into like other cultural mythologies. Like, I would love to at some time read Asian mythologies, like Indian mythology, Eastern Asia. Love to delve into African mythology as well. To be honest, maybe I'm just a mythology geek, but I think it's really interesting because these are like stories that our ancestors told, and how they tried to make sense of a very bizarre world, and like they've lasted the test of time. Like, this is ancient stuff, and it's just incredible to read what people would have sat round campfires and in like communities telling each other. And like, oral history is just really fascinating because each time they would tell a story it would probably change. So what you get in this book isn't the original story of the Norse people. I don't know. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. I think I'll probably get round to picking up the Poetic Edda this year, and then maybe sort of delve into some of the other sagas as well. Freshwater by Akwaeke Emezi. I'm not too sure whether I've said that incorrectly. But it's almost like an amazing connection to talk about mythology, because this is very much entrenched in Nigerian and Igbo mythology. Like, there's the idea of the character being a Ogbanji. Again, I hate not being able to pronounce things, but it's because most things I've learned is through reading, so my pronunciation is terrible. But this was an outstanding read. For a debut novel, to be able to sort of captivate a reader in such a vivid and surreal way was just absolutely amazing. Like, I read this and I just felt so enthralled by it. Like, Emisy's prose is outstanding. They are one of the best writers I've read in the past year, just from this book alone. So I know that 2022 I'm going to get to more of their work, because I was just blown away, and I need to explore more of their prose and to see the evolution of the writer. Like, I think that's a really fascinating thing, is to read a debut novel and then to see how a writer evolves over time. And so if this was this sensational, I'm gonna probably be blown away by the rest of their work. And if you've not read this, I wholeheartedly urge you to read it. It's all about gender identity, cultural identity, and I guess the evolution of the self. Like, you may be born one thing, but you will slowly discover who you are through your interaction with the world. And yeah, like, this character goes through some stuff, and the way it's told as well is very interesting. Like, there are chapters where it's told from different points of view of the entities within the character. It's quite confusing to try and explain, and probably I'm only hitting the surface. So at some point I will probably need to reread this as well. But it is definitely something you need to read. Hiromi Kawakami's Strange Weather in Tokyo. This is definitely a comforting read. It does get a bit sad at one point, but it's just cosy. It goes through the seasons, and it follows two characters. One, an elderly former teacher, and the other, a middle-aged woman who was that older man's pupil back in the day. They reconnect and sort of share moments and food with each other, and sort of like form a really beautiful bond with each other. And I was just warmed by it. Like, I read this quite a while ago, and sometimes I still think about it. Beautiful. Arthur Schnitzler's Dream Story, or in its German title, Traumnovelle. This is the book that Stanley Kubrick based Eyes Wide Shut on, but it's like set in the early 19th century, I think. I can't remember. Like, it's a pretty cool read. Love the cover because it is darling Klimt. Well, yes. Love the cover because it's by the one, the only, Gustav Klimt. Perhaps my favourite artist ever in existence. Love his work. Absolute amazing bastard. What can I talk about this? It's all about like psychology, dreams, desire. So it's very much inspired by like the wave of like enlightenment stuff at that time, particularly Sigmund Freud. Nobody writing in this era could escape the influence of that kind of fucked up man. And yeah, so really interesting. Probably talked about this quite recently because I read it quite recently. I can't remember whether it was like November or October that I read it, but it's really interesting and it's really short. Next up, the only book I read in December because, I don't know, like I just wasn't feeling reading. To be honest, like 2021 was the year that I just didn't feel like reading. So I only read like 29 books when probably could have read more than that, but I was too interested in watching movies and TV. I think this is the only book I read last year that was released in the same year, which I think that just shows how I read books. Like, quite often I'll be like so behind on reading. Oh no, that's not true because I read the new Sally Rooney but was quite disappointed with it. Ignore everything I just said. This tells the story of two people, one female, one male, both black artists in London. The guy is a photographer and the girl is a dancer. And this book was very unique for me because it's told in second person, and I've never read anything like that. And so to begin with, it was quite jarring. I was like, what? This is just a bit too different. But the way that Caleb Azuma Nelson writes is outstanding. It's like poetry, almost like we're getting just little snapshots, which is kind of the point, I guess, because he's a photographer. So like each little chapter is like a snapshot through this character's eyes. I thought that was really cool. And it's also about love, art, and also the experience of being black in a country that oppresses you and, quite frankly, is dangerous to be in sometimes. It's important to read from different points of view so that you can consider how people have to live their lives, and then you think, I don't have to go through this. That just shows that there is such a thing as white privilege and that I benefit from it every single day of my life. Beautiful, outstanding book. Read it, please. And then final book, I've probably spoken about this 100 billion times, but it is Suzuki Netsukawa's The Cat Who Saved Books. Beautiful, charming. Like, it's not groundbreaking literature, but it's heartwarming, cute, and just, I don't know, like, it made me feel better for a while reading it. And sometimes that's all you need in a book. You don't need it to have some sort of profound philosophical. You don't need it to be like profoundly philosophical or challenging the very, like, I don't know, fibres of your being. Sometimes it's enough just to be heartwarming and sweet, and this was very much that book. I've spoken about this a few times, so check out some of my other recent videos for more in-depth thoughts on that. Okay, so that is the end of my best books I read in 2021. Thank you for watching. Please let me know down in the comments section what your favourite books of the year were, and if you've got any recommendations, leave those as well. In terms of 2022 goals, I'm only setting myself the goal of reading 24 books as a minimum, and obviously I'll probably read more. Currently I'm reading The Bell in the Lake by Lars Muting and I'm loving it, and I've nearly finished it already, so who knows, maybe I'm gonna read 50 books this year, who knows. I'm the kind of person that setting specific reading goals is probably not a good idea, because I just get annoyed with, like, if I say, oh yeah, I'm gonna read this book now, this month, then quite often I'll just won't read it, and it's just a bit stupid. Like, that's why I can't run a book club, because I've tried setting one up a few times and it just doesn't work, because I've just decided, oh no, I'm not in the mood to read that. So maybe I'm going to say I'm going to read Silmarillion, some more work by Akake Emezi, and maybe a couple more classics. Haven't decided what they're going to be yet. And yeah. Oh, another one I know I need to read, and I've been meaning, oh, hair in my eye, is Octavia E. Butler. I need to read Parable of the Sower and the sequel. That also is a challenge. Maybe like some more sci-fi, because I love sci-fi. Oh yeah, and also I need to finish The Eye of the World and maybe get on to some more of the Wheel of Time books. But apart from that, I'm not really going to set myself goals. I'm just going to read what I want when I want, and that is the mood for 2022. Do what you want when you want, as long as it's not breaking the law or damaging someone. Anyway, thank you for watching. Have a great day. Please give me a like. If you're new here, follow. If you fancy it, follow. The word is subscribe. And hopefully this ambient rainfall hasn't been too annoying. I've tried to put the microphone as close to me as possible, but I'm not very good at projecting my voice, so maybe this video won't exist. Who knows, but hopefully it's not too annoying, and maybe I can edit it to make it sound less. And I'm now rambling, so I'll see you later. Bye bye.